Her husband's voice barely lingered in the air as he left for another late meeting, a kiss planted on her cheek out of habit more than affection. The house swallowed her in silence, and she sat in that quiet wondering when they had stopped, really looking at each other. Conversations had turned into schedules, dinners into routines, touches into obligations. Nights stretched out in emptiness, and she had grown too skilled at pretending she didn't feel it. The loneliness wasn't loud, it was slow, creeping into her skin, making her restless enough to stare at her phone as if it might hold the answer to something she couldn't admit out loud. Downloading the app felt like a reckless joke, a game she promised herself she wouldn't actually play. It was just swipes and profiles, a distraction while her husband sent her a thumbs up emoji instead of a real message. But curiosity had teeth, and the thrill of seeing strangers show interest in her pulled her deeper than she expected. At first, she dismissed the matches. Some were too obvious, some too dull. Then Ethan appeared. His words were sharp without being cruel, confident without arrogance. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. He spoke like someone who already knew she was craving something more than small talk. She told herself she was only responding because it was harmless. But harmless didn't feel like late-night exchanges where her fingers lingered over the keyboard, waiting for his replies. It didn't feel like smiling in the dark as he told her things her husband hadn't said in years. How her presence through the screen was addictive, how he imagined her voice, how he wanted to meet. She refused at first, her excuses piling up as fast as his persistence. Married, busy, not ready. He cut through every hesitation with one line that stuck. "You're already here talking to me when you could be asleep next to him." Isn't that already a choice? The truth stung. She hadn't thought of it that way, but he was right. She could have turned off her phone, deleted the app, rolled over, and tried to feel content in her husband's warmth. Instead, she was sneaking into another man's world. It wasn't about falling in love. It was about waking up the part of herself that had been buried under routine and neglect. Every time her husband sat across from her at dinner distracted, the temptation burned hotter. Ethan's words became the voice she waited for. Her marriage became a place she endured. It wasn't sudden, the decision to meet. It was a build-up, a slow crumble of boundaries. She didn't plan to say yes, but the night she came home to Daniel already asleep, his back turned as if even his dreams had no space for her, the silence pressed too heavily. Ethan's message waited. One drink, no strings, just us. One time. She didn't type yes. She just sent the time and place, her hands shaking, her breath shallow as if she had just crossed into forbidden territory and could never step back. She thought about everything on the drive there, every reason she should turn around. Her ring caught the glow of the streetlights, and she gripped the wheel harder, telling herself this wasn't who she was. But the deeper truth whispered louder. It had already become who she was the moment she started wanting it. She tried to comfort herself with the lie that it would stay faceless, nameless, a single encounter sealed in the secrecy of a parking lot. No one needed to know, not even Ethan beyond that night. The anonymity was part of the thrill. Yet beneath that thrill, guilt already threaded itself through her chest. She wondered what Daniel would think if he could see her now, lips painted, heart racing, heading toward a stranger's arms instead of his. But then she remembered the way he had stopped noticing, the way his phone received more of his attention than she did, the way his affection had become another item to check off a list. That memory hardened her resolve. She wanted to feel something raw, even if only for one night, even if it left her ashamed in the morning. She pulled into the lot, headlights flashing briefly before darkness settled again. Her pulse hammered so loudly it drowned out the hum of the engine. She sat there for a moment, breathing hard, her body torn between the safety of leaving and the danger of staying. The glow of another car's lights appeared in the corner of her vision, and she knew it was him. The final wall inside her cracked, not because she had no choice, but because she had already chosen long before this night began. She stepped out, the cool air biting her skin, every nerve awake, every breath reminding her that she was about to do something she could never erase. That 760+ words for section 1. Do you want me to move directly into writing section 2? The act? Same word count, no repetition, faceless detail, no head-on scenes. Next? The moment their eyes met, words became unnecessary. The rush of danger, the reckless choice already made, pressed harder against her than any excuse she had rehearsed. His voice was low, steady, carrying none of the hesitation she felt. He stepped closer as if he had been waiting his whole life for this exact second, and she didn't resist. She felt her body betray her doubt, responding before her mind could form another warning. The taste of risk filled her mouth when his lips found hers, forceful and unrelenting, stripping away the last layer of self-control she had carried with her. It didn't feel like the fumbling touches of her husband, careful and scheduled. This was rushed, desperate, almost hungry. His hands were firm, decisive, finding her without hesitation. She felt pinned by the moment, every breath shallow, every nerve alight as if fire had replaced her blood. The secrecy cloaked them both, the anonymity pulling her deeper, letting her surrender to someone she wouldn't have to see again. That facelessness made her bolder, silenced the voice that screamed at her to stop. He pulled her against him, and the barrier between them dissolved into heat and urgency. The thrill of being wanted so completely, so unapologetically was intoxicating. She let her body answer for her, a confession spoken through trembling hands and hurried kisses. The world shrank into that space, her ring glinting faintly in the shadows like a witness she refused to acknowledge. She told herself it was just this once. Just a borrowed moment, but the pulse in her veins felt like addiction already blooming. When he pressed her back, her breath caught, her chest heaving as she let go of the last fragments of restraint. The reality of what she was doing came crashing in even as she gave herself over to it. His movements were urgent, unapologetic, pushing her further into a place where there was no turning back. She clutched at him, torn between guilt and hunger, her mind flickering to Daniel only to force itself away again. This wasn't about her husband. This was about her. About being seen, touched, consumed in a way she had almost forgotten she could be. Every motion carried weight. Every touch branded her skin with the knowledge that she was breaking promises, shattering boundaries. And yet she didn't stop. Her pulse throbbed louder than her conscience, and the rush of surrender left her lightheaded. The tension built too quickly, like a storm she couldn't hold back. When it broke, it did so with an intensity that stole her breath and left her, gasping, her hands trembling for the force of it. For a fleeting second, all she felt was release, a liberation so sharp it almost felt holy. But reality never waits long. She realized what had happened the instant his body pressed more firmly against hers, the finality of it undeniable. The heat of him remained, marking her in a way that went far beyond the skin. Her stomach twisted as the thought tore through her. He hadn't pulled away, hadn't spared her the risk. Panic rose, thick and suffocating, drowning the brief euphoria that had just consumed her. She froze, staring past him into the shadows, already imagining the chain of consequences. He didn't linger in the aftermath. His movements were casual, almost careless, as though this moment was nothing more than a secret scratched into the night and left to disappear. She envied his detachment, hated it too, because it reminded her that this meant less to him than it ever could to her. For him, it was just another conquest. For her, it was a betrayal too deep to undo. She gathered herself quickly, fumbling, hands shaking, her chest tight with the need to escape. The silence between them grew heavy, her breaths ragged as she turned away, the taste of him still on her lips, the weight of what she had done pressing down harder with each second. She couldn't bring herself to speak because words would make it too real. Instead, she rushed back toward the safety of her car, though there was no safety left. Every step away from him felt like stepping deeper into a lie she couldn't escape. The wheel was cold under her hands as she started the engine, headlights flickering against the emptiness of the lot. Her reflection in the rearview mirror caught her off guard. Eyes wide, lips swollen, guilt etched across her features. She hardly recognized the woman staring back, but she knew she couldn't ever undo her choices. She drove away fast, as if distance could erase what lingered inside her, but the memory clung, heavy and permanent, reminding her that her life had just shifted in a way she could never reverse. That's 760 plus words for section 2. Do you want me to move on and write? Section 3. The consequence, same word count, no repetition, faceless aftermath focus.
Sleep never came that night, no matter how many times she shifted under the covers beside her husband. His steady breathing should have comforted her, but it only reminded her of how blind he was to the storm raging inches away. Every time she closed her eyes, flashes of what had happened replayed, blurring pleasure and shame into something unbearable. Her body still carried the memory, but her mind twisted it into guilt so sharp it kept her awake until morning light seeped into the room. She turned to face Daniel, studying the man she had once promised everything to, and wondered how a single night could create such an unbridgeable distance. The days that followed felt mechanical, as though she were acting in a play no one else knew was scripted. She cooked, laughed when expected, and let Daniel talk about work while pretending to listen. On the surface, nothing had changed, but beneath it every word, every glance was tainted with the knowledge of what she had done. She deleted the app, scrolled through her phone in panic to ensure no traces remained, yet the weight in her chest didn't ease. It was no longer about what anyone could see, it was about what she couldn't forget. Every ordinary gesture became charged with suspicion she invented herself. When Daniel touched her shoulder absent-mindedly, she flinched, imagining he must sense something different about her. When he asked how her day was, she fumbled over answers, as if guilt was stamped on her forehead. But he never looked deeper. His attention remained scattered, split between deadlines and meetings, leaving her to wrestle alone with the truth. That neglect, the same emptiness that had pushed her into someone else's arms, now shielded her. It was ironic, almost cruel. His distance gave her room to hide, but hiding didn't make the guilt fade. It grew heavier, spreading into her bones until she found herself staring at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, whispering silent confessions she could never voice to him. She couldn't tell Daniel, not because she didn't care, but because the words would detonate everything. She had wanted a taste of freedom, not the destruction of her life. Yet every choice demanded a consequence, and hers arrived sooner than she expected. The call came 2 days later, late in the evening, vibrating against the countertop where she had left her phone. She saw the unfamiliar number, her breath catching instantly because she already knew. When she answered, Ethan's voice was casual, detached, as though they hadn't just shared something that fractured her entire marriage. He didn't ask how she was or whether she regretted it. He simply reminded her of what had happened, of what they had done, and left the silence hanging heavy on her side of the line. Her heart pounded, palms down, as she forced herself to respond calmly, but inside panic tore her apart. She realized then how little control she had. To him, she was an anonymous thrill, a story he might retell to himself or someone else without consequence. But for her, it was a ticking bomb. If he chose to reach out again, if he demanded more, if he revealed anything, her life would unravel. The anonymity that once made it feel safe now felt like a trap she couldn't escape. That night she sat across from Daniel at dinner, watching him eat in silence, unaware of how close his world had come to collapse. The urge to confess almost spilled over, a desperate need to release the weight crushing her chest. But when she opened her mouth, the words stuck, choking her, because she knew the truth would not set her free, it would destroy him, destroy them both. So she swallowed it down, forced a smile, and let the lie grow roots deeper into her life. Still, the aftershocks didn't fade. Every glance at her husband became a test of endurance, every unanswered message from Ethan a source of dread and twisted anticipation. Part of her feared he would reach out again, another part secretly wanted him to. She hated herself for that hunger, but denying it only made it worse. The taste of freedom, even poisoned by guilt, had awoken something in her that couldn't be easily buried. Lying in bed beside Daniel, she stared into the darkness, realizing she now lived in two worlds. One was safe, predictable, bound by vows she had already broken. The other was dangerous, intoxicating, a secret that threatened everything but made her feel alive. She had crossed a line she couldn't uncross, and no amount of pretending could restore the simplicity of who she had been before. When the phone buzzed again in the middle of the night, her heart lurched. She didn't move, didn't reach for it, afraid of what another message might demand, afraid of what she might agree to if temptation outweighed fear. Daniel stirred beside her, unaware, pulling the blanket higher as if to shield himself from the chill that wasn't in the air but in her silence. She turned onto her back, eyes wide open, knowing that even if she never answered, even if she cut Ethan off forever, the damage was already permanent. The betrayal wasn't just in what she had done, it was in what she had become. A woman who could no longer look at her husband without hearing another man's voice in the back of her mind. A woman who carried both the thrill of desire and the terror of exposure in every breath. A woman who had learned, in a single night, that nothing would ever be the same again. That's 760+ words for Section 3, the fallout, paranoia, and irreversible shift. Would you like me to now compile all 3 sections into one continuous 2,000-word story file, clean, seamless, faceless, so you can use it as a final draft?